Hey friends, Barkey J Dog here, back with another deep dive movie review. This time, we're talking about gigantic women. No, get out of my video, go away, get out of my video there, no, I'm not talking about that, honestly. No, what I mean is, we're talking about giganticism, a staple of sci-fi movies ever since the 1950s, and in literature well before that. H.G. Wells penned a story called Food of the Gods, which is the progenitor of a lot of this stuff, as was Frank L. Baum's Alice in Wonderland. But in the movies, there were lots of things made gigantic, usually due to science gone wrong, pollution, alien encounters, magic, or our old friend, atomic radiation. There was Tarantula and Earth versus the Spider. I reviewed them a while back. There was Beginning of the End in 1957, where Peter Graves has to deal with giant grasshoppers. And a giant praying mantis attacks mankind in The Deadly Mantis. Jim Davis from Dallas faced off against the monster from Green Hell, which turned out to be giant wasps that couldn't fly, but they kill people. And Them, where mankind is threatened by giant ants. Oh, creepy. There was even this giant turkey from the Giant Claw. And humans were turned gigantic too, with The Amazing Colossal Man and its sequel, War of the Colossal Beast. And since a man became ginormous, naturally they made women ginormous too. Equal opportunity and all that. And that's what we're talking about in this one. Ginormous women. First up, we have the classic that started it all, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman from 1958. In this one, a wealthy heiress who has issues is saddled with a guy who's no good. Her hubby's a real loser, and he runs around on her and everything. But she's nuts about him and can't work up the gumption to kick his worthless carcass to the curb. He openly cheats with the local floozy and everything. Well, one night she drives out in the desert and encounters a giant alien. No one believes her, and her hubby and the floozy think this is the perfect opportunity to get rid of his missus, and then he and the floozy can spend all the wife's money. But she convinces him to go back out and look for this alien, and they find it. He scampers away like the coward he is. Well, one thing leads to another, and after an encounter with the alien, the chick grows to ginormous size, and eventually starts stomping around town looking for her no-good husband so she can get revenge. Attack of the 50-Foot Woman stars, well, pretty much no one you'd ever know. Although the actress who plays the floozy, Yvette Vickers, got other sexy chick roles and appeared in Playboy magazine. The no-good husband was played by character actor William Hudson, and he previously appeared in The Amazing Colossal Man. Allison Hayes plays the giant chick. She had been in several horror pictures, such as The Unearthly, The Hypnotic Eye, and The Undead, that last one for Roger Corman. She was also in an interesting sci-fi picture called The Crawling Hand, where a dead astronaut's hand goes around killing people. She also appeared with Elvis in Tickle Me. This is pretty much one of the worst sci-fi movies ever made. Pure schlock. Cheap effects, crappy dialogue, you name it. It was made on the cheap to the point where the actor playing the alien here also winds up playing the local bartender. And this has to be the most unconvincing giant hand ever made. But the direction is surprisingly good, and the movie is better than it has a right to be. And it transcended its cheap-ass status pretty much due to one thing. This. The movie poster for Attack of the 50-Foot Woman is iconic. The original painting is even in a museum right now. This scene is never in the movie. The woman doesn't grow quite this big and never straddles an overpass. But who cares? Even today, this is the quintessential image of the low-budget but imaginative sci-fi pictures made at the time. This movie inspired a parody of sorts not long after. The 30-Foot Bride of Gandhi came out just the next year in 1959. In this one, Lou Costello is a trash collector who builds scientific gadgets on the side. He wants to marry his cute chick, but her uncle, the local banker and a rich guy who owns everything in town and is running for governor, says no. The pair sneak off to test one of Lou's gadgets, and she gets mad because he won't stand up to the uncle so they can get married. In a huff, she runs into a cave and gets herself irradiated by a weird form of radiation and grows ginormous. Comedy ensues. Whether Lou's machine had anything to do with it or not isn't clear. If I'm honest, I have to say this movie is just not very good. There are some fair effects and a few chuckles, but it really isn't all that funny. It kind of drags and winds up being mostly meh. The cast is the best part. We have Lou Costello in his last film role and in one of the few films of note he made without his comedy partner, Bud Abbott. Gotta be said, Lou seems a little tired here. His daughter, Carol Costello, also appears in this as a townswoman. Dorothy Provine plays the bride. She went on to be in lots of stuff. The Great Race, It's a Mad, Mad World, That Darn Cat, Who's Minding the Mint. She retired in the 1970s and lived happily ever after, so good for her. There are a lot of character actors in this you may recognize. Charles Lane is here. He was in a metric ton of supporting roles over his long career. It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, The Music Man, The Farmer's Daughter, Flying Tigers. Hard-working guy, Charles Lane. He started in 1930 and worked all the way up to 1995 and then some. We also have Gale Gordon as the rich uncle. He worked in radio for years, playing Mayor Latrivia on Fibber McGee and Molly. He played the principal on the famous Eve Arden show, Our Miss Brooks, and was on The Great Gildersleeve too. But you probably know him best as Mr. Mooney, Lucille Ball's boss on The Lucy Show. Ironically, he plays a banker in that too. Al Savini plays a townsman, if you can spot him. He went on to appear in the first 3 Rocky pictures as the ringside assistant, the so-called cut man. And the movie has a cute dog, so there's that, I guess. Next up, how about this thing? Village of the Giants from 1965. This was directed by Burt I. Gordon, who also directed a bunch of size-based sci-fi like the aforementioned Amazing Colossal Man, Beginning of the End, Earth vs. the Spider, and a straight-up adaptation of Food of the Gods. In this one, some dopey delinquents come into town looking to cause trouble. Meanwhile, this brainy kid has invented a chemical compound he calls goo, which makes things grow to ginormous size when ingested. The kid and his sister's boyfriend test it out on some ducks and make giant ducks who go dancing at the local teen hangout. I told you it was dopey. The bad kids see this and decide to steal the formula and cash in. But being delinquents, naturally they argue amongst themselves and they all decide to eat the goo. Then they become ginormous and take over the town, threatening the townspeople by dancing, mostly in slow motion. At least the chicks are sexy, so hopefully the day can be saved. In our cast, we have Tommy Kirk as our hero, a familiar face. He was in lots of stuff as a child actor, like Swiss Family Robinson, Babes in Toyland, The Absent-Minded Professor, and a whole lot of other stuff for Disney. He's not great, but he's here. We also have Johnny Crawford, who played Mark, Lucas McCain's son, on The Rifleman. They make a point to have him wear a cowboy hat just to make the connection. Ron Howard is also in this. He plays the kid who comes up with the so-called goo that makes people grow. And Beau Bridges plays the leader of the ginormous juvenile delinquents. You might also recognize Joy Harmon, the sexy chick, from Cool Hand Luke. And choreographer Tony "Oh Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind" Basil plays the redhead. Yes, that's really her. She sang Mickey. And this dopey cat here, it's the same one who appears in The Incredible Shrinking Man, Rhubarb, and Breakfast at Tiffany's. This was kind of a come-down for him, but he's a cat, so he deserved it. This movie also has a cute dog, so points for that. Cashing in on the teen music craze, there's a musical number by the Beau Brummels, too. A lot of the effects are passable, but this, I mean, just look at those fake legs, man. That looks awful, doesn't it? They're not even trying to hide how awful it looks. Ugh. And yes, this is the movie where Johnny Crawford hangs off a woman's bra. Twice. Now look, I like a nice pert set, just like any other red-blooded American dog, but these are a bit on the large size, am I right? I mean, I've heard of a D cup, but this here's more like Morse code. You know, D cup. Looks like they spent more money on this female torso than Beau Bridges' legs anyway. This is pretty much a dumb, campy comedy. Some of that comedy being unintentional. Are these teens a threat or not? Well, sort of, I guess. They move in slow motion some of the time, but normal speed the rest of the time. I wish they'd have picked one and went with it. Also, these delinquents are pretty clean cut, aren't they? They don't do dope or anything, and they come off as kids out of a Disney movie. It's all really dumb, especially the dancing ducks, but don't worry, they get turned into party chow at the big picnic. Really dumb movie. Fun, but really dumb. But don't worry, it only gets dumber from here. Like with this one. Attack of the 60-Foot Centerfolds from 1995. In this one, 3 centerfolds are hanging out with a Hugh Hefner type, trying to win the coveted title of Plaything of the Year or whatever. Our heroine, Angel, has secretly been taking experimental treatments from a lab working on a new growth technique using a chemical formula. Well, in order to be the hottest and the sexiest, she downs several doses of the stuff and then, of course, grows ginormous. A rival also takes some of this formula, and then the two have a big old fight. You can guess the rest. This one is completely, totally dumb. But it knows it's dumb, and it's just having fun with the whole thing, so that makes it kind of all right. It's dumb as all get out, but kind of fun to watch. There are a few name brands that pop up in this, albeit mostly in cameo roles. Tommy Kirk from Village of the Giants is back, momentarily. Stanley Livingston is here too. Arguably his most famous role was as Chip Douglas on My Three Sons. Russ Tamblyn from East Side, West Side, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, and he played Dr. Jacoby on Twin Peaks. He's here, again, very briefly as a gas station attendant. You may spot Tony Lorta as well. He was the man with Bogart's face. He looked a lot like Bogart, so he played him in a couple of films, such as Hot Shots. And we have the sci-fi legend, collector, and author Forrest J. Ackerman playing Dracula in this cameo. The effects in this one are not that good, to be honest. They have some bad match shots, and the scaling is all over the place, so our heroine's height changes from scene to scene. I mean, look at this. Is she standing in a ditch or what? And they get the sight lines wrong several times, too. So she and the people she interacts with, sometimes they aren't really looking at each other, breaking the illusion. But the effects aren't really the point of this thing, am I right? sexy chicks getting topless and becoming ginormous and going on a rampage. That's all this is about, really. It's really dumb. But again, it knows it's dumb, and that makes it fun. Well, how about this? Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader. This one from 2012. Don't worry, these are college cheerleaders, not the high school variety, so it's okay to ogle when the inevitable topless scenes happen. I know I did! Here we have a girl who's a plain Jane and needs to live up to her mom's former status as a cheerleader and campus queen. She works in a lab that has created a new serum to help with plastic surgery. Well, she gets to feeling kinda down because she's no good at cheerleading and can't make the squad, and the sorority she wants to join is hazing her, and the girl running those things is a mean queen who makes her life miserable. So she shoots up some of this formula and becomes a bodacious babe overnight. Sounds good, right? But of course there are side effects, and she becomes ginormous. Later, the mean queen gets injected too, and they have a big topless cat fight in the football stadium. So you know, I like this picture. Actually, it's dopey, but again, kind of fun. It's better than some of these others. The effects are actually very good. They used a lot of forced perspective and other camera trickery to make the girl look gigantic. This was produced by Roger Corman, who cameos as the dean of the campus. And while he didn't direct this, director John Landis also cameos as a professor. Treat Williams is a bad corporate executive who wants to exploit the cheerleader. Ted Raimi from Sequest DSV, and I guess the Evil Dead, plays the professor in charge of the lab. We also have Sean Young in a small role as the girl's mom. The mean queen is good too, and the college stuff is sort of cozily familiar, so this one is actually fun and fairly well made. Unlike this one from 2022, Attack of the 50-Foot CamGirl. This one stars no one you'd know and is made on the cheap. Internet star and CamGirl Beverly is an airhead whose slimy producer husband is just using her to get rich. They have an assistant, Fuchsia. He's having an affair with her. Anyway, she consumes an untested enzyme their company has invested in to virtue signal about helping feed the world, and yep, she grows gigantic. Then, in a jealous rage, Fuchsia also has some, and they wind up in a big old catfight at the end. Now, I'll give this one credit. It's not really well made, but the big fight and some other scenes employ some old school practical effects and miniatures. And that stuff looked really good. It gave you a good sense of scale. Most of these pictures don't do very well. The team behind this made some other low-budget stuff that's adjacent to this kind of thing, but, well, I haven't seen any of it. Anyway, finally, to come full circle, how about this one? A made-for-HBO TV movie from 1993. Remember this logo? Wow, that takes you back, doesn't it? This is a remake of the original film, and I've got to say, they stayed pretty true to it. This one gets really bad ratings on IMDb, but I don't think it's that bad. In fact, I was really surprised at how enjoyable this was. Well, comparatively. You can tell they wanted to elevate the source material and honor it. It was made with real love for the original, and it shows. In our cast, Daryl Hannah from Splash plays Nancy, the put-upon heiress, and Daniel Baldwin is her no-good loser husband. The sexy floozy has a bit more agency in this one. She was played by Christy Conaway. William Wyndham Commodore Decker from Star Trek. He plays Nancy's father. Paul Benedict, next-door neighbor Mr. Bentley on The Jeffersons. He's here as a doctor trying to figure out what happened. I like that they point out how being ginormous puts a strain on Nancy's heart. That was a nice twist. It showed they were thinking about how all of it would work. I also really like this dopey deputy and the sheriff. They drive around in a 1950s squad car. This one has some really good effects, and while there are some bad match shots, and you can tell some of the shots were made in a small soundstage, most of the effects are practical and hold up. There's an episode of Movie Magic that talks about this picture. Man, I love that show. Anyway, they go behind the scenes and show how they did some of these effects. Forced perspective, hanging miniatures, and all of that. I'll try to remember to link to it down below for you there. Things I didn't like? Well, there is a feminist angle to this, but it's not overbearing like they do now. The final fate of the husband was pretty dumb. Didn't care for that. And the bad match shots are really painfully obvious. Fortunately, there's not too many. Also, the humor is a bit all over the place. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, a bit parody, dark comedy, then it takes itself seriously. I don't know, but I didn't hate it. I think it deserves better than that 4-star rating. Maybe like a 5? 5.5? That's fair. Out of all of these movies, it was the best of the bunch. Cheerleader was alright though. Centerfolds and CamGirl were both dopey but fun. As remakes go, they tried to do it right, and I give full credit for that. This isn't just a cheap cash grab to exploit a property like remakes today. They made this thing with love, and it shows. If only Hollywood could make things with that same level of love and attention instead of just deconstruction and messaging. Imagine the kind of cool movies we'd have. Instead of rolling our eyes when we hear a movie is a remake, we might actually look forward to a new spin on a beloved story. But unlike this movie, that's not what Hollywood does anymore. Well, that's not going to be the end of it, though. Word is Tim Burton is planning to do a remake of the original movie. It's Tim Burton, so I want to have hope it would be okay, but who knows? I don't think they can improve on it any more than the 1993 film did, so maybe just watch that one instead. Unless he uses stop motion, that would be cool. Otherwise, I don't know. Anyway, you take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.